Okay, we were going to talk about grief.
Okay, so we're going to start this conversation. It's going to be about grief. And I think it's certainly timely in my life because I have lost two very close family members in the space of 6 days at the beginning of this year, which is, it's like, it's really hard to process that. I think what happens is that you start to shut down, your brain shuts off from thinking or feeling about anything because it's just too much. The intensity of it is all too much. And for me, grief is ever changing, like it's ever changing even in my day. So there are periods of anger, there's periods of intense sadness, there's periods of nothing. There's just, there's periods of laughter in my day. Like, I think grief kind of is more like a wave. It just kind of comes in and, rides in and then comes back out again and is ever flexible. And I know that in the past, when I lost my parents and close friends and stuff, I would always try to resist that emotion. I always tried to resist the pain of feeling the loss. And I think I did myself a disservice for doing that, because when you just simply have that emotion take place in your life and you allow that pain to be there, it doesn't stay forever. And I think that's what I used to think, that, oh God, if I let this in, if I let this pain in, and it's not like I was keeping it out, I was just telling myself a story, right? But I mean, I was like, if I let this pain, intense pain in to feel this loss in my life, I'm never going to lose it. I'll never get out of this particular moment in time. And I think what I've learned from losing as many people as I have is that that is not true. That pain will come, it will sit for a while, and then it will move on. It's not going to be with me totally all the time. And if it hangs out for a while, that's okay too, because it's a process that, for me, I have to go through, a process that I have to feel that emotion in order to be able to create some peace for myself, because it's really hard to constantly resist and be in this mode all the time. To say, I'm not going to feel this. I'm not, like, forget it. I'm just going to get busy. I'm going to, and trying not to process anything. It's like when I've been giving myself that grace to say, okay, no, like right now, I'm just going to sit and cry. I just feel like crying. It's okay to do that. And
Right.
just, let it happen.
Do you feel that you had to be strong? And that when you said, like, in the past, like, you felt that by being strong and not allowing the weight to come through, that, like, I don't know, sometimes as the woman, and you just feel like you have to be the anchor, and like, I'll be the strong one, and I won't allow it to, I don't want to use the word embrace, but allow the wave to come through.
It's interesting because I think we are misgiven in that we think, oh, to be strong means that you don't feel whatever's happening. And I think really, to be strong, it means to allow those emotions to take place, because it is not only does it give you the ability to have that emotion process and go through your body and come out on the other side, because it does come out on the other side, right? It's like, it is like a wave. It comes in, you're feeling, you're emotional, and then it goes back out again, right? Just like the ocean tide, right? It just kind of comes in, it comes and goes back out. And I feel that in the past, when I was trying to be strong, that meant, oh, you're not allowed to cry, you're not allowed to feel, you're not allowed to talk about this. It's like the events happened, it's gone, get on with your life, right? And I feel that actually that wasn't being strong at all. I denied all of that to happen, and I denied the ability to talk about these people that were important in my life. And not only was I denying myself those emotions, I was denying other people to let them have their emotions as well. Because when you're sitting there and you're like, okay, that's it, we're just going to be, we're not crying, we're not doing this. It's like people around you are like, okay, well, clearly we're not, we got to do the same. I got to buck up and not be that way. And when somebody sees you in that emotional state, it gives them the ability to be emotional as well, I think.
I also think grief is a very personal emotion,
Mhm. Very much so.
extremely personal. I don't think there is a right or wrong way to grieve. I do believe, though, like being too strong and holding everything in is definitely unhealthy.
Mhm.
I remember when my mom passed, my stepdad was like, and my mom had been battling cancer, so there was tons of prescription drugs all around the house. And the next day, my dad walked over and handed me this basket and was like, get rid of these. I can't have a memory of that. And I understood that because that was a negative compensation to what my mom was going through. So it was like he needed to remove that from the house because that reminded him of the sadness of cancer. And that was okay. Like I understood that part. The part that was a little more difficult was like 10 days later, he asked me to empty her closet. He needed that gone. And for him, it was, I couldn't understand that because I don't know if there's a right or wrong when you're supposed to move clothes out or not supposed to move clothes out.
Mhm.
I have no clue on that. But for him, it was part of his process.
Right.
But he had pictures of her all over the house. He would always talk about her. We would have our sad moments about her. We would have other discussions. He just couldn't have her clothing and the medical prescription pills around. Now, unfortunately, Tracy, same as you, I lost my stepdad, which I knew I was going to lose. He was in final stages of cancer. But 17 days, I lost my dad unexpectedly. They were both older. So my dad was 89 when he passed. And because he lived in Connecticut and because where he lived, and I'm in Wisconsin, when I got there, I am his only child. I only had the weekend that I was there, or the week I was there, that I had to empty where he lived.
Mhm.
So I had to make decisions the day after he passed
Yeah.
on what to do with all of those belongings and
Mhm.
everything in the house. It was a small apartment, but still. So, and then when we came home, my boys took some, and then I came home, and it was unfortunately the holidays. And then I went into all of that, like shutdown, like not knowing what to do, because as you were saying before, you get strong. I got to be strong. I have to plan the funeral. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to. And then you just shut down afterward. That's what I had to do. I shut down. And there are times, like you were saying, it ebbs and flows. It has been 2 years. It was in 2019. In November and December. And there are times where that time comes and it will slap me in the face. It will slap me in the face, and we talk about, I'll just have my time. I'll go cry. I'll get mad. I'll write them a letter. I've written them letters telling them, something going on with my life or how much I miss them or something, just because it's a way for me to feel like I'm communicating with them.
Mhm. It's, and I think that's really important because we feel, or sometimes we've been told, depending on how we've been brought up, that crying is not a good thing. Like you're not allowed to cry, you shouldn't cry. But somebody told me once, and it has always stuck with me. that grief is really love with no place to go. And it's that's just such a beautiful thing. And it's like, yeah, it is. It's like you have this intense emotion for this person, and there's nowhere to put it. You can't give it to them. You can't call them up and go, hey, how are you? Like
Nope.
there's nowhere for that emotion to go to. And crying is just a beautiful expression really of that emotion. Like there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't
No.
anything wrong with that. And yeah, it's you're right though, Michelle, that it really is a very personal thing, and people will go through it in their own way and process things their own way, because there is no right or wrong way for it. Everyone's experience will be different. The only thing that's universal is really that loss, the fact that there has been a loss, right? And it's hard. It's hard to say goodbye to the physical body of somebody. They're always there, right? You always have the ability to love them no matter what, whether they're here or not, which is a beautiful experience. You always have the ability to think about them and recall them in any way you want, right? That's another beautiful thing about our human brains, is that we tend to, when someone does go, we tend to focus in on all the good parts about that person, and we start to let the, any negative experiences kind of fade away. And it's really wonderful that we have that ability to do that. And for some people, it's also having that physical thing. Oh, I need this because this was mom's, right? And this makes me feel, I'm, when I see that, I think of her, or when I touch it, you are reconnected with that person, which is why, for some people, when, like Michelle, you said your dad got rid of all of those clothes so quickly, it can be hard on people watching that to say, why would you want to get rid of that? Like, I would think, for me, God forbid, if my husband passed, I wouldn't get rid of anything. I'd be like, I'm holding on to everything. Like, I'm not, but for other people, it's like, get it out. I don't want to see it. I don't like, it's either too painful, or it's not how they want to think about that person, or, again, going back to that whole thing of it being super personal.
Yeah, I think the hurt, like your heart physically hurts when you're going through grief, and it just is overwhelming sometimes. And people also have to give themselves time. Time is the healer. You'll never, just because you are moving on with your life and you might laugh again and you might feel happiness, does not mean you're not still grieving for that person.
Oh, for sure.
And I think people forget that. They think if I'm happy again, that I forgot that person. And that's not true. That's not true at all. It took me a little bit to feel that. It took me a little bit because they had passed around holidays. It was between Christmas and Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so, it took a little bit for me to be able to understand it is okay to be happy around the holidays. And I make sure I include them in holidays. It's something that, maybe I talk about them, or maybe it's, I do something that they've always done, or I have an ornament or a piece out from them. It's just, you have a memory. I think people don't understand always the importance of that memory of that person is more important than all of the grieving. Sometimes that memory can spark so much happiness into you.
That's what I do at all our occasions. There's a little representation of my mom, a little representation of my father, of my sister, like just little things. It could be a plate, it could be I'm wearing a particular ring or something like that. But I think that's also that judging, like that you start, if you laugh too soon after, like grief has its own emotions, are all over the place, and you really don't know how you're gonna feel, or something could just throw you off you just don't know. And I found with all of my losses, it's time. Time is the only thing that gets you through it. And day after day, it just, you know, exactly what you were saying, Tracy, and you were saying, Michelle, is that you get through it.
Yeah.
My biggest thing now is the loss of the new memories. When you go, oh, my mom would have loved that.
Yes.
Or,
Oh,
my
yes.
oh, my dad missed out on this. Or my sister, you know, she had young children when she passed, and they're all growing up and they're having children of their own. And we're all like, oh, she would have just been the best nana, you know, and all that stuff. And that's when, I don't know, that's when it kind of, you know, a little up, caught in the
Yeah.
throat moments for me.
And it's funny, the boys, my children will say that to me. So when my youngest one got, when he got the Great Dane, that was one of my mom's favorite dogs. He's like, they called her Mem. He's like, oh, Mem would have loved to meet Gomez. And I'm like, she already's here. She's already seen him. Like, she's already with him and whatever. But, you know, and that sparks warmth in my heart when I hear my boys talk about their grandparents and I wish they could have seen this, or so I know they have memories that they are leaning on also.
It really is all about the memories at the end of the day, isn't it? Like for everything, like it, even as we're talking about people who have passed on and the memory of them once they're gone, but in the long and short of it, it's all about the memories you create with the people that are around you day to day, with just whatever it is, to create as many memories as you possibly can, because at the end of it, that's all you have.
Yeah,
that's all you have.
And it's funny that we're talking about that aspect now, because so for myself, I'm in a newer relationship than you guys. So Peter and I have been together for 7 years. And so I never had the pleasure of meeting his dad. His dad passed before I came in the picture, such as my mom passed before he came in the picture. And there are things he'll say something about his dad, and I'll be like, tell me about that memory. Tell me about it. And I could just see him like light up, and when he talks about it, or I get to know that person a little bit more. And he'll do the same thing with my mom, or we'll talk about something, or when my stepdad did. So it's really wonderful to help people, if you see them going through some grief, to ask them about a memory that sparks, because you help them bring some of that happiness through some really hard times, and that they remember they have those memories.
Yes. I think that's also for people who are looking in on someone who has lost somebody, there is that feeling of hopelessness. Like even the dynamic within our whole family, when we lost our 2 family members at the beginning of the year, like we would look at each other and go, like, I just feel totally useless here. Like I don't like, there is no way of comforting somebody. Like you can, like, comforting in terms of fixing it, right? Because like that's what we tend to want to do. Let me fix it. Let me take that pain from you so you no longer have to feel it. And you can't do that. You can share in it, and you can, hug each other and talk about that person. And I think that is sometimes what creates some separation with people, is that they honestly don't know what to do, so they do nothing and they stay away because they don't know what to do. Right. And it's like, there is no wrong thing to do, right? It's like, pick up the phone, talk to that person, say, wow, I have this memory, right? I mean, when you're sitting around with all your friends, what do? You reminisce, right? You reminisce about all the stuff that you've done, all the things, all the places you've been together, and all the happy times that you've had together. And you tell the same stories over and over and over again, because they're fun and you like to hear them, and somebody new might be there to hear it and share in that. And it's the same thing when somebody's gone. You just want to talk about them. You want to talk about them, share their memories, share all of that. And there doesn't have to be that distance that people sometimes arbitrarily create just because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle that person who is going through the grieving process.
You're totally right, Tracy. Like, there was one incident at one of our family dinners, and my husband's brother has passed quite a while ago. And the kids were there and all that, and we were talking to them, and he brought up this great story of their dad, and everyone was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you talking? He's like, well, why wouldn't I? And the kids just loved it. It's like, oh, I never knew that story about my dad. Tell me more and all this stuff. And it was just, there was really mixed reactions depending on what family member was looking on. And it was like, why wouldn't we talk about him?
Right.
And why wouldn't we tell stories about him? So
Yeah. It's
but
what,
there's
it's
definitely
what else.
family members that didn't like it.
Well, and again, though, I think that is a generational thing, right? Like
Yeah.
it was
Yeah,
like,
'cause
you
they
know,
were the older
growing
ones.
up, I know when people had passed, when I was much, much younger, like, you know, in my teens, it was like, okay, well, once the funeral was over with, that was it. You don't talk about that person anymore. You don't bring it up. You don't bring up you don't ask anybody, well, how you feeling? Like, are you okay? Like, how you dealing with it? Like, that doesn't ever happen, right? So depending on your age, there was a whole culture of what was appropriate and what wasn't appropriate. And I really think it's important for our kids of today's age to know that to have those kinds of conversations like your family did, Tracy, is so important because it keeps that person around. It keeps that person alive. And because that's what we want to do. We want them with us, even when they're not with us. We still want to share their experiences, their life, their memories, and all of those things. And look how much those kids enjoyed that.
Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you as a regular member of our community.